100 million people. At least that many people were killed by all the wars of the 20th century combined. But about the same number, 100 million, died from this in the same century. Today, 11 million cigarettes are sold every minute across the globe. In total, 1.3 billion people are already smokers. We could throw around dozens of facts about how smoking kills. But all this doesn't work. How did tobacco companies manage to hook humanity on one of the most dangerous habits? And why does it show no signs of ending? This is the famous Marlboro cowboy, more specifically, the actor Wayne McLaren. In 1976, he played the role of a rugged, independent man in a cigarette commercial. And 15 years later, in 1992, after having one lung removed, he ended up dying of lung cancer. McLaren is the perfect example of what tobacco companies really do. They're not really selling you a product. Dried tobacco is just dried tobacco, whether 100 years ago or today. Each time they reinvent the attractive image of the smoker to entice new and inexperienced youth into getting hooked on nicotine, replacing the cowboys of the past who died from smoking. See for yourself, Marlboro, the brand once advertised by the cowboy, is the best-selling tobacco brand in the world today. In the US, nearly half of all consumers choose it. And the brand itself is regarded as the most expensive among cigarette-producing companies. But until the mid-1950s, before that famous commercial, nobody really knew about Marlboro, and the brand's sales accounted for less than 1% of the market. Now pay attention, at the time, filtered cigarettes were advertised for sale to women. By the way, the filter was made orange to conceal lipstick marks. So, what caused everything to change? The year is 1950. British epidemiologist Richard Dahl publicly proves that if you smoke, you're much more likely to get lung cancer and some kind of heart disease. Around the world, other scientists begin publishing studies and calling on governments to ban or restrict the sale of cigarettes. As you can imagine, that didn't happen. So, what did tobacco companies do to stay out of trouble? They started actively promoting filtered cigarettes as a supposedly less harmful alternative, which of course is nonsense. And Marlboro had a problem. Remember when I said they were trying to market themselves as luxury cigarettes for women? Well, men of that time had no intention of touching something made for ladies. They had to do something. So, the fellas went to the famous advertising man, Leo Burnett. He suggested that the tobacco workers avoid talking about filters, new technologies, or any other information that actually pointed to the fact that smoking is bad for you. Why? Just look at these rugged images. The sea wolf, the construction worker, the war correspondent, and the most ingenious of them all, the cowboy. The main message of this advertising aimed at men is, fellas, don't be ashamed that we used to sell this to women. Look at these independent macho men. They don't care that the cigarette has a filter. And this starts to work because the swell actors who look so charming and healthy on the advertising posters have a bigger impact on the brain than all the studies about smoking and lunch cancer. And it starts to work. The charismatic, healthy-looking actors on advertising posters leave a stronger impression on the brain than all the studies about smoking and lung cancer. You have a whole life ahead of you before that happens, but you want to be an independent macho with a cigarette in your teeth right now. And yes, tobacco companies have repeatedly pulled that stunt with handsome young people. Just look at how much money is in the tobacco business today. $965 billion. That's roughly twice South Korea's annual budget. And then there's $350 billion. That's the estimated value of the global drug trade. Why am I comparing the tobacco industry to drug trafficking and South Korea budget? To show you just how much, and more importantly, how legally people profit from a substance that causes addiction and kills. But it wasn't always this way. Take, for example, England's King James I, a staunch opponent of smoking and author of the Counterblast to Tobacco treatise. In 1604, he tried to curb the growing trend by imposing a staggering 4,000% excise tax on tobacco sales. However, this measure failed to achieve the desired effect. By then, London already had around 7,000 tobacco merchants. 3 centuries later, the British Crown had completely changed its stance. The new king of Great Britain, Edward VII, helped repopularize smoking. After his coronation, he famously declared, "Gentlemen, you may smoke," a phrase now featured in every book about cigars. The thing is, at the time, etiquette rules forbade smoking in public places that weren't designated for it, and smoking in front of women was considered particularly bad tone. But still, why did so few people smoke in the past? Because tobacco was expensive back then, and most people smoked cigars or pipes. Production volumes were small, and everything was made by hand. But in 1881, this machine changed the world. It could automatically roll 200 cigarettes per minute, while merchants rolling by hand could only produce about 4. Now compare the numbers. In 12 hours, a person could theoretically roll around 2,500 cigarettes, while the machine could produce 144,000. That's an over 50-fold increase in productivity. What happened next? Take a look. In 1881, the world produced around 6 billion cigarettes. 30 years later, that number had increased 44-fold. And by the mid-20th century, it was already 250 times higher. Of course, the growth wasn't as staggering as, say, oil production, but it was still significant. And just like it did on the oil industry, war had an excellent impact on cigarettes. Look at this photo from World War I, or this one. There are plenty more like them. That's right, tobacco companies found multiple ways to get soldiers to smoke. Soldiers were sent free cigarettes along with canned goods and bread to keep morale up at the front, supposedly to help them relax and relieve stress. Here is what Remarque wrote about this in All Quiet on the Western Front. 10 cigars, 20 cigarettes, and 2 quids of chew per man. Now that is decent. Soldiers were featured in ads. Why? Because soldiers are defenders of the motherland, and their image is universally positive. And of course, they were counting on the fact that after the war, and all wars eventually end, soldiers would return home, keep their bad habit, and get their loved ones hooked. And that's exactly what happened. Just look at the numbers. At the beginning of the 20th century, only 6% of adults in the US smoked. 60 years later, nearly half did. Scientists called this the tobacco epidemic. How did it all happen so fast? Advertising, wild and of any kind. Take a look at this poster from 1928. It features a sports star of the time, New York Yankees player Tony Lazzeri. He's promoting cigarettes with a wild slogan, "For a slender figure, reach for a lucky instead of a sweet." And at the bottom, there's an even worse caption. "No throat irritation, no cough." But getting men hooked isn't enough. You need women too. And of course, they use the same approach as with the baseball star. Next came the doctors, advocating for the harmlessness of cigarettes. Think about it. 20,679 doctors claimed that Luckies were less irritating to the throat. Think this was just one brand's creative advertising? Then what about this commercial?
More doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette.
The tobacco industry didn't stop at doctors. Their marketers had no problem using children, even newborns. Just take a look at this slogan. "Gee, Dad, you always get the best of everything, even Marlboro." And for the grand finale, cigarettes for every taste, advertised by Santa Claus and future US President Ronald Reagan. Friends, just to be clear, smoking is harmful and quitting is very difficult. I'm showing these materials purely for educational purposes, to shed light on the tactics advertisers use and the tobacco companies ordering these ads. When every second adult in the country was smoking and scientists were loudly warning about the dangers, it was time to crack down on permissiveness. After all, the voters weren't happy. First, the tobacco industry was forced to warn about the harmful effects of smoking and was banned from claiming any benefits of filters or advertising on radio and TV. As you can imagine, this didn't stop anyone. The companies still had plenty of money, but instead of direct advertising, they started investing in ways to bypass the restrictions, like product placement in movies. Take a look at this scene from Superman. And of course, cigarettes made their way into sports. The boldest example, the pinnacle of tobacco marketing, is Michael Schumacher. Looking at these many photos, you'd think he wasn't racing for Ferrari, but for Marlboro. The tobacco company sponsored the F1 team for an incredible 14 years. During their best years, they paid the Italians $100 million per year, $20 million of which went to Schumacher's salary. During this time, the German racer became a 7-time world champion and in fact, the most famous racer in history. And during this same period, Marlboro's sales nearly doubled, from 163 billion cigarettes per year to 301 billion. As you can see from these astronomical sales figures, the money spent on Ferrari and Schumacher was relatively small. The tobacco industry could have kept selling cigarettes and skirting laws for another 100 years. But this man, Jeffrey Wigand, changed everything, and Russell Crowe would later portray him in The Insider. Basically, this man worked in R&D at a major tobacco company. In 1995, after leaving the job, he gave an interview that shocked everyone. He revealed that his former employers deliberately understated nicotine levels and added ammonia to cigarettes to make them even more addictive. After that, people began suing tobacco companies and winning massive settlements. For example, American Myola Williams sued Philip Morris, the company that owns Marlboro, for $155 million. Her lawyers proved that the company was responsible for her husband's death from lung cancer. Until his final days, he believed in the safety of smoking, which was promoted in cigarette advertisements. But this wasn't just about the money in this lawsuit, or any others. The televised scandal sparked outrage among ordinary people. The tobacco industry has some nerve. They've poisoned us for years, made billions, and lied to us. And you and the government are doing nothing to protect us. And year after year, with one hand, they began to tighten the screws. Just compare what a pack of cigarettes looked like in the 90s to what it looks like today. And with the other hand, they collected fines from cigarette manufacturers. Take that $155 million fine. That ordinary American woman didn't receive the full amount. $98 million went to the state of Oregon. You'd think it would be simple. Here you go, fellow citizen, the enemy is defeated. No more cigarette ads, you won't even see them in stores, and your children won't be exposed to them. But let me remind you, the main goal of tobacco companies has always been the younger generation, the ones who must replace whom? The dead cowboys of the past. And that means tobacco companies have something new and trendy, and once again, it's supposedly less harmful and much safer. But first, let's look at the numbers. Take Philip Morris, the largest company. Starting in 2013, its earnings stagnate and even decline. Then, suddenly everything starts rising sharply. It's only logical to assume that around 2017, something good happened to the company, right? Yes, by that point, they were heavily promoting IQOS, their tobacco heating devices. Naturally, they were doing so by bypassing strict advertising bans. Why not? We're not selling cigarettes. It's a gadget, and you can charge it. As for the sticks, people buy those themselves. To put things into perspective, in Philip Morris's 2022 annual report, these smokeless, but still nicotine-filled, IQOS sticks accounted for 1/3 of the company's total revenue. In Q4, that share was even higher at 36%, and it will continue to grow. Do you know why? These sticks and gadgets have incredibly high profit margins. Selling just one of these sticks can generate 1.5 times more profit than a traditional cigarette. And we haven't even started talking about vapes and other trendy electronic smoking gadgets for every taste. Let's remember our Marlboro cowboy once again, the actor McLaren, who died of lung cancer. After his death, his brother appeared in a different commercial.
His name was Wayne McLaurin, and he was my brother. I'm Mac McLaurin. The tobacco industry used my brother in ads to create an image that smoking makes you independent. Don't believe it. Lying there with all those tubes in you? How independent can you really be?
Now take another look at the advertising posters for these new nicotine gadgets. It all starts with a dream. Be unique, be special. For decades, tobacco companies have been playing us the same way, only switching up the characters and the backdrop, and we keep falling for it every time. So please, don't smoke in front of your children. They watch you and imitate what you do. just like we've all done with those cowboys.